Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of precision. It feels almost like engineering.
Oh, yeah, completely.
Like you break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points at it and says, there it is.
Right, it's binary. It's either broken or it's not broken. It's clean. Honestly, it's comforting. We
Yeah.
really like things to be visible and easily categorized like that.
Exactly. But then you step into the world of clinical documentation, and suddenly it's like that x-ray machine is just broken.
Yeah.
We're looking at a linguistic landscape that is, well, honestly, it's pretty murky. And in a clinical setting, a single missing piece of punctuation can literally change patient care.
It really can. It happens more often than you'd think.
So if you are preparing for the TEAS and HESI nursing entrance exams, or, honestly, if you just want to ensure your writing is never misinterpreted in the real world, we need to talk about the structural integrity of your sentences.
Yes, the foundational stuff.
Right. So for today's deep dive, our mission is to decode what actually makes a complete sentence. We're going to figure out why your ear is constantly lying to you and build a toolkit to spot run-ons and fragments before they cause chaos.
I love that. A toolkit for grammar chaos.
But before we can fix these errors, we have to define them. And the textbook definitions are, they're a lot trickier than they appear at first glance. So let's just start at the top. What actually makes a sentence complete?
So the golden rule of standard school grammar requires 3 distinct elements. First, if you want a complete sentence, you absolutely must have a subject.
Okay, so like the who or the what.
Exactly, the who or what. Second, you must have a finite verb. Now, that's the action or the state of being that is firmly tied to a tense and time.
Tied to a tense, right?
Right. And then crucially, a third thing is you must have a complete thought. If you are missing any of those 3 things, you have created a sentence fragment.
Just a piece of a sentence.
Right. And on the flip side of that, if you cram 2 independent clauses together without the proper, connecting tissue, you create a run-on sentence.
Okay, wait, I have to push back on one of those requirements right away. Because the phrase complete thought feels, incredibly slippery to me.
Oh, so?
Well, let's say I ask you, are you coming? And you just answer, yes. You understood exactly what I meant. So isn't yes a complete thought?
Ah, okay, so you've hit on this massive gap between context and grammar. Because you are absolutely right that yes is psychologically complete.
Right, it makes total sense.
Yeah, in the context of a conversation, it delivers the full meaning. You answer the question, the communication loop is totally closed,
Why?
but grammatically,
Grammatically, it fails.
it's completely empty. It has no subject and it has no verb. So it is, technically speaking, a fragment.
Wow, okay, so meaning and grammar aren't always holding hands. A thought can make perfect sense without actually being a sentence.
Precisely. And, it works in reverse, too. Consider a sentence like, the committee, having reviewed the file, decided.
Okay.
Grammatically, that is an independent clause. It has a clear subject, committee, and it has a finite verb, decided. It meets 2 of the 3 criteria perfectly.
But if you read it out loud, your brain just screams that it's incomplete.
Exactly. It feels totally unresolved to a reader's ear.
Because it's like, decided what? It just leaves you hanging on a cliff.
Right. It's missing that complete thought.
So for someone sitting down to take a standardized test, you just cannot rely on your ear. I was thinking about this earlier, and it's almost like a nurse trying to check a patient's exact core temperature just by feeling their forehead.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Like you might get a general vibe that they're warm, but you can't rely on vibes for an official chart.
You absolutely cannot.
You have to use the thermometer.
Yeah.
You have to check for the actual structural parts, subject, finite verb, complete thought.
Yeah, because the ear test is an illusion. Our brains naturally fill in the blanks of human speech all the time. We rely on tone, context, body language, and, shared assumptions.
Right, all the stuff that isn't on a written test.
Exactly. Standardized exams aren't testing human speech. They are testing a very specific, rigid structure that has to stand on its own, completely independent of the person who wrote it.
Which actually brings up a really interesting question. If relying on our ear is so natural for all of us, why are the actual rules of grammar so rigid? Like, why are they so disconnected from how we naturally speak to one another?
Well, the history of this is surprisingly dramatic.
Really? Grammar drama.
Oh, yeah. These rules about run-ons and fragments, they weren't handed down on stone tablets from antiquity or anything. They were essentially born out of an institutional crisis at Harvard University in 1874.
Wait, a grammar crisis in Harvard? That's hilarious.
It was a full-blown academic panic. Harvard instituted this new English composition entrance exam, and the faculty were just horrified by the results.
Like the essays were that bad.
Terrible. And you have to picture the cultural moment, right? It's post-Civil War America, the middle class is rising, public education is expanding rapidly, and Harvard is desperately trying to maintain a very specific standard of elite communication.
So they wanted to filter people out.
Exactly. They had these young men applying who had easily passed rigorous oral exams in Latin Greek, but when they were asked to write an English essay, the results were disastrous. I mean, the essays were totally full of run-together clauses, fragments, and comma splices.
So these highly educated students just didn't know how to write a basic English sentence?
They knew how to speak, and they knew classical rhetoric, but the actual mechanics of written English were treated as an afterthought in schools at the time. It became this massive national scandal about the state of American education.
Wow. Over comma splices.
Pretty much. And a rhetoric professor at Harvard named Adam Sherman Hill basically led the charge to fix it. He wrote these highly influential textbooks that took all these messy conversational writing habits and codified them into named mistakes.
Named mistakes. That feels like a massive shift. Like he turned natural variations in how people write into objective errors.
That is exactly the birthplace of the American grammar error tradition. Hill didn't treat these as abstract linguistic quirks. He categorized them as objective failures that had to be drilled out of students before they could be allowed into college.
And that just stuck around.
It hardened over the 20th century. John E. Warner's famous 1948 grammar series gave millions of kids the terminology we still use today.
Oh, Warner's, right.
Yeah, and then Strunk and White's The Elements of Style cemented the idea for adults. The rule became, you either join your clauses correctly or you put a period between them. No exceptions.
But hold on, I have to throw a wrench into this strict, unbreakable rule.
Okay, let's hear it.
If it's so objective, why do professional, wildly successful writers break it all the time? Like Cormac McCarthy uses sentence fragments constantly to build tension.
He does.
And the biggest advertising slogan in the world, Nike's just do it. That is technically a fragment, isn't it?
It is.
Even Jane Austen used comma splices in her novels. So are they all just failing Harvard's entrance exam?
Well, yes. Technically, Harvard would have failed Jane Austen in 1874. But this is where we have to look at the linguist Noam Chomsky. He demonstrated the difference between structure and meaning beautifully.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this.
He created this famous sentence, "Colorless green ideas sleep furiously."
I love that sentence. It sounds so poetic until you actually try to think about what it means.
Right. Because structurally, it is flawless. It has a subject, a verb, adjectives, an adverb. Everything is in the exact right place.
But it means absolutely nothing.
It is total nonsense. Chomsky showed that grammar is a mechanical structure, separate from meaning. This highlights the difference between prescriptive linguistics, which are strict rules about how language should be used, and descriptive linguistics, which looks at how people actually use language.
So a descriptive linguist would look at Nike's "just do it" and say, well, people understand it, so it works.
Exactly. They would say it is a highly effective, deliberate rhetorical fragment. It isn't a violation of human language, it's a stylistic choice. But standardized tests, like the TEAS and HESI, they use a prescriptive definition.
Meaning there is a strict right and wrong, no matter how good it sounds to us.
Right. A fragment or a run-on isn't an absolute violation of English. It is simply a violation of a specific formal register. The register of formal expository prose.
Okay, let's make sure we ground this for the listener. Because these exams, they're not testing your ability to write the next great American novel.
No, definitely not.
They don't care if you can write a punchy advertising slogan. They're testing your ability to operate within the specific, formal register required for clinical documentation. They want to know if you can write an unambiguous incident report.
Yes. When you are taking these exams, you have to put on your formal register hat. You are being tested on a very specific set of editorial conventions that were largely agreed upon in the 20th century.
Knowing that we are being tested on this strict formal register, let's look at how sentences actually break down when we try to write them. Because the tests will definitely try to trick you using words that look completely normal.
Oh, they love their traps.
Let's start with verbs. Imagine you see a sentence like this on the exam. The patient waiting in the exam room for over an hour. Why is that flagged as a fragment? I hear a subject, patient, and I hear an action, waiting.
It looks like a verb, yes. But waiting in this context is a participle. It is an ing form of verb acting as a modifier, but it lacks a tense marker.
Meaning what, exactly?
It doesn't tell us when the action happened. Without a helping verb like is waiting or was waiting, it simply cannot function as the finite verb of the sentence.
Oh, I see. It's like a verb wearing a disguise. It has the shape of an action, but is not doing the structural heavy lifting of anchoring the sentence in time. It's just an illusion.
That's a great way to put it. So how would you fix it based on our structural rules?
I guess I just take off the disguise and give it a definitive tense.
Yeah.
So the patient was waiting in the exam room, or just the patient waited, now it's anchored.
Perfect. That solves the missing verb trap. But what happens when we add words to an already complete sentence? Take the clause. The lab results hadn't come back yet.
Okay, that's structurally complete.
But what if we add one word to the front? Because the lab results hadn't come back yet.
Oh, it suddenly feels broken. And I see people write sentences like that in emails all the time.
It happens constantly in professional writing. The word because is a subordinating conjunction. The moment you drop a subordinating conjunction at the front of a clause, words like because, although, since, well, if you change its fundamental nature, you turn an independent clause into a dependent clause.
And it can no longer stand on its own.
Exactly.
A subordinating conjunction is almost like holding out a puzzle piece. By saying, because the lab results hadn't come back yet, you've added this great contextual nuance, but you're just holding the piece in the air, waiting for the rest of the puzzle. You've created a dependency. It logically demands a main independent clause to partner with it. So you have to finish it. The nurse delayed the medication. Boom. Pieces connected.
You cannot leave the piece hanging. So that covers fragments where parts are missing or dependent. But let's look at the opposite problem, when we smash too many thoughts together.
Oh, okay, the run-ons.
Right. Consider this. I love to write papers. I would write one every day if I had the time.
Wow, you almost run out of breath reading that.
But if you read it quickly in your head, it actually sounds like a single passionate thought. And that is why fused run-ons are so incredibly easy to miss on a first read. Your inner reading voice naturally supplies the pause that your punctuation forgot.
The ear lies to us again.
Exactly. Structurally, you have two full independent clauses smashed together with zero connecting tissue. No period, no conjunction.
Most people know a fused run-on is wrong when they see it, though. But what about its polite cousin, the comma splice? Take a sentence like, participation in a senior center's activities benefits older adults' health. These programs also improve social and cognitive functioning. There is a comma right there in the middle connecting the two thoughts. So why is that still a run-on?
Because a comma alone is simply not strong enough to join two independent clauses. Think of a comma as a yield sign, not a bridge. It is grammatically illegal in standard written English to use it as a structural joint between two complete sentences.
So what's the fix?
If you want to use a comma to join two independent clauses, you absolutely must pair it with a coordinating conjunction.
Oh, the famous M-boys.
Yes, fanboys.
For and, nor, but, or yet, so.
Those are your structural bridges. If
Yeah.
you don't have a fanboys word next to that comma, or if you haven't used a semicolon, you've created a comma splice error.
This perfectly sets up something that confuses even strong writers, I think. What about words like however? Because I see people use a comma with however all the time to join sentences. If I write, the results were negative, however, the patient still reported pain. I've provided a bridge, haven't I?
You have provided a logical bridge, yes, but not a grammatical one. Words like however, therefore, moreover, and consequently, they are conjunctive adverbs.
Conjunctive adverbs.
Right. They feel like conjunctions because they act like transitional glue for your ideas, but structurally they are not coordinating conjunctions. They just don't have the grammatical superglue required to fuse two independent clauses together.
So they are more like signposts telling you where the logic is going rather than the actual cement holding the bricks together.
That is a vital distinction. Because they lack that grammatical superglue, using them with just a comma creates a run-on. Those conjunctive adverbs demand a semicolon or a full period before them, always.
So you have to write, the results were negative, semicolon, however, the patient still reported pain.
Exactly. This is perhaps the most deliberately tricky trap on these exams because they look so much like coordinating conjunctions, but they do not play by the same rules.
Before we move off the mechanics entirely, I want to ask about length. Is a run-on just a really long sentence? Like if I write a 40-word sentence, is it automatically a run-on?
Length has absolutely nothing to do with it. Think about the shortest verse in the English Bible, Jesus wept. Subject, finite verb, complete thought, 2 words, perfect sentence.
Right.
Or consider I ran. I fell. 4 words. 2 perfectly complete, grammatically sound sentences.
Now consider a sentence like this. The nurse who had been on shift since 6 that morning and who was covering for a colleague who had called in sick.
Oh boy.
That is 24 words long. It sounds exhausting just to read, but it's just one massive winding fragment.
Because it never actually gets to the point.
Right. It's an entire chain of dependent clauses with no main independent verb. So the takeaway for you studying out there is do not count words. Always look past the length and check for the structural parts.
Subject. Finite verb. Complete thought. Every single time.
So we've gone through the origins of these rigid rules, we've navigated the traps of participles and conjunctive adverbs, and we have our structural toolkit. But I want to pivot here because it's vital to remember why you are actually learning this.
The real-world application.
Yes. Once you pass the TEAS, or the HESI, and you are actually working on a busy hospital floor, why does this level of syntactical precision actually matter?
It matters because clinical documentation is a legal record of events. We established earlier that in spoken conversation, context fills in all the blanks. If you use a fragment when speaking to a colleague at the nurse's station, they can just ask, wait, what did you mean?
Yeah, you can clarify in 5 seconds.
Exactly. But in a patient chart, you do not have the luxury of real-time clarification. You are communicating with a doctor who might read that chart at 3 in the morning when you are fast asleep at home.
Let's role-play a concrete example to see just how bad this can get. Imagine you are the next nurse coming on shift, and you read this exact note in a patient's chart. Patient reported chest pain medication administered. There's no punctuation, just those 6 words.
It's completely ambiguous.
Let's break down the confusion. Scenario A, did the patient report having chest pain, and therefore, as a response, the medication was administered? As in, patient reported chest pain, period, medication administered.
That is a highly logical reading. It implies an acute cardiac event that was actively treated by the staff.
But look at the alternative. Did the patient report on the chest pain medication that had already been given to them earlier? As in, patient reported chest pain medication was administered by someone else.
Depending on where that missing punctuation goes or what connecting word is missing, the entire sequence of clinical events flips. In the first scenario, the patient is currently in distress and requires immediate follow-up.
Right.
In the second scenario, the patient is simply providing a medical history of what happened at home or maybe on a previous shift.
And if I guess wrong as the oncoming nurse, I might double dose the patient with heavy pain medication, or worse, I might ignore an active heart attack because I thought it was already handled.
That flip dictates continuity of care. It dictates liability. Ultimately, it dictates patient safety. This isn't about avoiding red ink from an English teacher anymore or, keeping the ghosts of 1874 Harvard professors happy.
Oh, right.
It's about communicating critical, life-altering information in environments where the reader has to act on your words immediately and definitively. The nursing programs require these exams because they need evidence that an applicant can produce clear, professionally punctuated writing before they are ever trusted with discharge instructions or incident reports.
So let's summarize the mission we set out on today. First, ignore your ear. It will lie to you because human speech relies on context that standard written English simply does not have. Always verify the structure using your thermometer. You need a subject, a finite verb, and a complete thought. Remember the disguises verbs where. Don't let an ing participle without a tense fool you. Don't leave a subordinating conjunction hanging like an unattached puzzle piece. And remember that a comma is weak. It needs a fanboy's conjunction to join independent clauses. And those tricky signpost words like however and therefore demand a semicolon.
You are mastering a very specific formal register. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on as you continue your test prep. We talked about how these punctuation norms really tightened up in the 20th century, which is why Jane Austen's comma splices would be flagged as errors on your exam today.
Which is still wild to me.
It is, but it proves that correctness in grammar is historically a moving target.
It's constantly shifting based on how society changes.
Exactly. So think about the future. Digital communication like texting, instant messaging, even shorthand and modern charting software, it's pushing us towards shorter, faster, far more fragmented text. The way we communicate daily is becoming much looser and heavily reliant on the context of the digital medium.
That's so true.
So, will the strict, formal register of clinical documentation eventually loosen up to match how we communicate today? Or, because the medical stakes are so incredibly high, will clinical writing become even more rigidly separated from everyday speech, acting almost like a completely different language?
Wow.
It's a fascinating tension between the evolution of language and the static need for absolute clarity in medicine, something for you to ponder as you study.
Because at the end of the day, when you're writing that chart note, you
Mhm.
don't want to leave your reader swimming in diagnostic muddy waters. You want your sentences to be as clean, clear, and unambiguous as that bright white line on an X-ray. Until next time, keep analyzing, keep questioning, and best of luck on your exams.